English translation, 533rd contact. Thursday, the 5th of January 2012, 23:04 hours.
I was in the kitchen having a conversation when you called me Ptaah. Greetings, and also asked why not Florena, but you came here? Surely you want to get the offer, or...
I also greet you, dear friend. The reason for my coming here is actually what Florena asked you to do this morning. And the reason I came here myself is because I had to transfer the data from the control device to my machine, because the time was right again. Therefore, I combine this activity with a visit to you.
Somehow I'm a little surprised that you do this with the tiny control disk yourself. Unfortunately, I have to say that it disappeared without a trace from my folder. Andreas and I searched the old protocol folders together, but we did not find what we were looking for. There was also nothing to be found in his office files. In the end, however, there was an entry in the minutes saying that the matter was discussed and the order was placed. This was addressed to Andreas because his offer of little more than about 34,500, which we rounded up to 35,000 was cheaper on the one hand, and Andreas had started his own business on the other. So we thought that the carpenter in our own club was probably better and should be considered more than a foreign company. Look here. This was recorded at the 385th General Assembly on the 7th of March 2009. I will read it to you.
It was therefore decided to use the money to renovate the east facade of the house in the center, which will cost between CHF 17,000 and CHF 25,000. The contract is awarded to Andreas. An earlier offer for the east facade, which Billy once obtained, was CHF 35,000.
It should be noted that I had already received an offer from the company Donnie on 2.6. 2005, but the amount was higher and around CHF 38,000, so the order to this company was rejected by the General Assembly.
This protocol excerpt is known to me from our records. However, the fact that Andreas's offer has now disappeared from your folder is unfortunate, because Quetzal and I wanted to find out the exact amount offered and what materials and expenses are necessary for such a facade renovation, such as those required on the eastern front of the main center building. Due to the lack of an offer, it would therefore be gratifying if Andreas would give us a detailed statement of everything after the work is completed. And what you are asking about working with the small control unit is this. The difficult issue with the control device required Quetzal, Zafanatpanich and I to create a completely new apparatus together some time ago. Because the old one had been disturbed by the earthly space debris to such an extent in its function with regard to very precise recordings that a lot of data was not recorded. And since Quetzal and Zafanatpanich did not find the time, and Florena and Njana also have not yet been able to handle this new technology, I took on the necessary task.
Aha, and may I ask whether the size of the small control disk is still the same? And with regard to your wish that Andreas should make a precise statement after finishing the work, this will clearly be done with a total bill, because that is so common.
That is also good. No, the dimensions of the micro device are now 6x6x6 millimeters, and now has a storage capacity of 280,000 terabytes.
Man, that is a multiple of the old control panel.
There are also many more factors that are monitored and registered by the device, but I do not want to give any further details officially.
Never mind, I am not asking. But here's another question. Did Florena send you my multi-part question about the decomposable bar, and were you able to ask your linguists and scribes about it?
Of course, Florena sent me the questions because she is very reliable.
Sorry, I did not want to doubt that. My question was really not meant to be. It was stupid of me to ask it in this way, because I knew that she had sent you my questions. I just didn't think enough. Because actually I only wanted to ask if you could ask your scholars.
There is no need to apologize because my words were also not meant to be understood in the way you understood them. It was not my intention that you should think that Florena's reliability was in doubt. But of course I have consulted with our scholars who deal with the German language, and they have explained the following to me. The term decay has two meanings. On the one hand, it describes the form of a temporary replacement, whereby a person takes over or fulfills some activity or the administration or processing of a territory for a limited period of time for someone else. In this way, the term means that a decomposition is carried out, while the person carrying out such a temporary activity is called an administrator, respectively, according to their gender. If, however, such an activity is to be carried out, it is referred to by the term decay. In other words, it is said that an activity is too decaying. If, however, this activity is currently being carried out, then it is referred to by the term decay, meaning that the activity is decaying, respectively, being substituted. With regard to this form of decay, there is not a term in such a way that an activity would be decomposable. But an activity in the form of such a substitution can only be decomposable or putrefactive. On the other hand, in the second case, the term putrefaction means the slow decay of a dead body, respectively, a carcass which decomposes and is thus exposed to putrefaction. In this case, too, decay and putrefaction take place, but in such a way that decomposition and decay are meant, whereby such a carcass is not putrescible but only decomposable or putrescible. The basic term thus has two different meanings, which are defined only by the application of the specific factors applicable to them.
That is clear, and that is what I learned at school and also from your father Svath. Then another question, now regarding our 496th official contact conversation on Saturday, the 19th of June 2010. Regarding the city of Milusha, respectively Troy, a passive member asks the question whether this name might be a spelling mistake, and therefore the real name is Wilusa. In some old treaty there is supposed to be talk of a King Alexandru of Wilusa, whereby Wilusa is to be equated with Troy.
Basically, I do not want to openly engage in antiquity stories and questions about them if you are not personally interested and the questions do not originate with you, as I explained earlier. Only exceptionally, but really only exceptionally, do I want to take a stand on the question asked and explain that the name Milusha was correct and was in use long before the Hittites besieged and conquered the city, committing monstrous crimes against the inhabitants, also against women and children who were then downright slaughtered. The name Milusha already existed in pre-Hittite times, namely in the 4th millennium BC, respectively, before Emmanuel, when the then small town on the hill Hisarlik on the western Mediterranean coast of today's Turkey was founded. In the 13th century BC, respectively, before Emmanuel, the town was generously expanded into a city, which also marked a new date of foundation. Then the city belonged to the Hittite Empire Wilusa, which was ruled by King Alexandru under the Hittite rule. I will not comment further on this.
Then this is also clear. Thank you. Now it is 2012, and already the conspiracy theories about the Mayan calendar are starting to make a big splash. Just this evening, Swiss television broadcasted a program about it, which of course was quite Swiss channel and therefore not of great value to really create a significant clarification about the absurdity of the conspiracy theories. As far as the year 2012 is concerned, it is a normal year, just as it has been for the past 2 millennia, during which time and again the end of the world has been prophesied, and many of the human beings who believe in it have been driven to suicide and crime by all kinds of conspiracy theories. Esotericists, stargazers, clairvoyants, visionaries, biblical scholars, sect gurus, Armageddon, and other end-time believers, as well as all kinds of other crazy people are now booming again, and many are making horrendous financial profits. Of course, it cannot be denied that for years now, and both now and in the future, there has been a tremendous increase in climatic and natural disasters. such as huge floods and landslides, huge volcanic eruptions, devastating earthquakes, and seaquakes, which trigger gigantic tsunamis. And it is also a fact that nature with its fauna and flora is being destroyed more and more by the needs and absurdities of the huge mass of mankind, and that primeval storms bring enormous destruction. It is true to say, according to your data, that 25% of all catastrophic events are due to natural consequences, but that the 75% of all catastrophic events in nature and on the planet itself must be blamed on overpopulation. And when all this is considered, then the whole thing has nothing to do with conspiracy theories, but only with the unreasonableness of Earth humans, who like a wild rabbit pack have bred an incredibly evil overpopulation, through whose excesses, needs, and senseless things, actions, and deeds the Earth is exploited and everything is destroyed in many ways. According to the exact figures given by Ptaah, 8.2 billion, 8,200,000,000 human beings are today plaguing the climate, nature, the planet, and all life on it, contrary to the statistical estimation of the Earthlings that today, in 2012, there are only 7 billion. But this also has nothing to do with the conspiracy theories, which could not be more absurd, because the world is not going to end and everything will remain as it is. Only that the masses of overpopulation and all their unreasonableness will increase the whole thing in the coming years and decades. So neither angels nor a God or Jesus Christ are coming to conjure up Armageddon, just as no dark planet, comet, meteor, or asteroid, etc. is approaching, which is supposed to herald the end of the Earth. There are also no extraterrestrials coming to invade the Earth and enslave or exterminate mankind. But it is also a fact that no special constellation of planets will bring disaster to the Earth. For example, if the Soel planets are lined up in a line like a string of pearls, because even then it would have no effect on the Earth and all its life. In relation to the Sun, all the planets together are only a few grains of dust, which would never have such a force that a catastrophe for the Earth could result. There have been many such planetary constellations, where the SOL planets were lined up in a straight line, and this has never caused any catastrophes or other changes on Earth. In 2012, there will also be no apocalyptic horsemen to bring death and destruction, not even the forked man, the devil who is only fantasized by delusional believers, will start his regiment on Earth. So it turns out that everything that will happen in 2012 will be pure events and occurrences which, on the one hand, are pure in their origin and caused solely by nature, or which, on the other hand, are imposed on nature and the planet in a destructive way by the immense mass of human overpopulation, causing them to react with immense and manifold disasters. And finally, the word still has to be brought to the sun, because there are also some feeble-minded conspiracy theories circulating about the sun for the year 2012, such as that it should glow and emit such powerful rays that it would cause apocalyptic states of heat on Earth and destroy humanity. Another piece of nonsense in this regard is that electromagnetic radiation from the sun would disable all power stations and electrical and electronic apparatus, appliances, machines, etc. all over the Earth, creating an Armageddon, etc. But the fact is that in this respect too, everything is based on idiotic conspiracy theories which have no truth whatsoever and are only designed to frighten those who believe the nonsense, so that they can then be exploited financially. In this respect, all the sect gurus of end-time sects are in the front line, as well as those who, in their pathological stupidity, write books and writings full of conspiracy theories for profit, but in their cunning make horrendous money out of it. Concerning all the idiotic assertions referring to apocalyptic events on the sun, it has to be said that in this respect, nothing extraordinary is going to happen, and therefore there will also be no end of the world or anything like it on the 21st of December 2012. So the Mayan calendar also in relation to the sun does not refer to an end of the world respectively to an end of the world. What can be is the fact that with the sun its 11-year cycle is rounded off, in which the solar activity is supposed to reach a peak again, so that the solar flares, which were much smaller during the last 10 years, can increase again. The fact that solar activity is expected to increase again in autumn 2012 and spring 2013 has a natural origin in the 11-year solar activity cycle. Due to a strongly increased solar activity, it can happen that on Earth the electrical and electronic systems can be negatively influenced and put out of operation by electromagnetic influences from the stronger solar eruptions, respectively solar flares. However, if this should happen, it will only happen in certain areas, but not on the whole Earth. Major failures of electrical and electronic systems could well lead to catastrophic consequences, and the worldwide communications capability would also be affected, especially by the failure of communications satellites. Since much depends on electricity, as does the cooking of food, a little precaution can also help to solve this problem. For example, with a wood-burning cooker or a gas réchaud, etc., which is not too expensive. Should such an area be affected by a power failure, then at least in this respect something can be provided for. However, this is only a precautionary measure, but it must be understood that a widespread and catastrophic power failure is not to be expected, because if the sun really does resume increased activity during its 11-year cycle, which is questionable, then it will probably be the same as always, without an apocalypse or other enormous catastrophes caused by the end of the world. In the 11-year cycle, the number of sunspots increases or decreases, as does the solar activity. The 11 years are in turn half of a 22-year cycle in terms of magnetic intervals during which the poles of the sun orbit once. This is what I learned from you recently in a private conversation. You also said that next autumn and the beginning of spring 2013, the end of the 11-year cycle may be placed in a resting phase, because the lack of radiation and the reduced solar activity near the sun's poles would indicate that the sun could be approaching a longer resting period. Although by the end of 2012, the 24th current solar cycle will be nearing its expected maximum. You have stated that it shows that in the interior and on the surface of the sun and in the corona, activity will be greatly reduced during the next 25th solar cycle. Under certain circumstances, the cycle could even fail to occur at all. The conspiracy theories concerning the sun, that is to say, the fears and catastrophic scenarios of previously unimagined and enormous solar activity in 2012 or around this year, could therefore turn out to be exactly the opposite. If this were to happen, then, explicitly, a minimum of solar activity on Earth could lead to a little ice age, which could last for decades. You have said that this is an unusual and unforeseen development, and that it shows that three completely different facets of the sun are pointing in the same direction. This, you explained, could be a sign that the solar cycle is entering a dormant phase. So it is puzzling whether the current decline in solar activity may be a sign of what is known as the Maunder minimum. On the other hand, solar maxima are relatively short-lived, lasting several years, although they are usually accompanied by violent solar flares. Solar minima, on the other hand, where solar activity is greatly reduced, can last for many years, or even several decades. The best-known example of this is the Maunder minimum in the 17th century, which lasted a full 70 years and was accompanied by the peak of the so-called Little Ice Age between the 15th and 19th centuries. What you explained was that there is not yet any sign of the 25th cycle, so everything suggests that this cycle may be delayed until 2021 and 2022, with the possibility that it may not start at all. You have also noted a trend of long-lasting sunspot fading, suggesting that during the next cycle the solar flares will be so faint that there will be few or no sunspots at all.
This is all in accordance with my words, explanations, and statements as I have recently told you in private. You are really a good listener, and are able to reproduce everything as you are told.
So let's be surprised what is coming. But what I am still interested in is to what extent the strangers on Earth, who are obviously divided into three groups, behave towards you, since you do not want to have any contact with them.
According to our directives, we have kept away from them until today, and will also do so in the future. Just as we shield ourselves from all earthly locating equipment and locating devices of any kind, if I may say so in such simple terms, so we also shield ourselves from the Earth foreigners. The protective shields of our flying apparatus are designed in such a way that they cannot be penetrated in any way, and therefore our aircraft cannot be located. This is also the case when we keep the screens of our flying apparatus open so that they can be seen. But that is never enough to be able to take bearings on our flying apparatus or even register them. So far, the Earth foreigners operating in the terrestrial space, who form a unit despite their tripartite division, have not been able to find a way to determine our existence, because all their technical achievements are not sufficient and are far inferior to ours. This is of course also true of all the terrestrial technology in this field, which is still far below that used by the aliens. But since they, like the Earth humans, know through the terrestrial media such as television, radio, newspapers and magazines, etc., that you are in contact with us because this has been so reported, you have been observed for a long time both by the Earth foreigners and by the earthly military. Authorities and secret services, probably in the hope that they might thereby prove to themselves our existence and our contacts with you. They have not been able to do so to date, and they never will, because they are not capable of such a technique, and are therefore not able to reconcile the discrepancy in this respect. Just as all their efforts to find out about our existence have been in vain and useless to them, so it will remain.
Then some of the unknown flying apparatuses we have observed throughout the decades above and around our center could have been from those Earth foreigners, as was also the case at my former place of residence in Hinwil and the surrounding area.
This was indeed the case several times. And if you had asked us about it, we could have given you information about it, just as we always did when our flying apparatus was being observed in the center area or elsewhere and you asked about it.
Since I did not know that these Earth foreigners were watching me and were also looking for you, it did not occur to me to ask about it. Actually, it would have been up to you to inform me about it as well.
There was not a need for that. Because there is always a need for that only when you ask questions about something, or when we find that you need to be informed about certain important events and happenings, and about special importance. Whatever comes up in general conversations is a different matter again.
Of course, always the same. If something is not important for you to talk about it openly, then it also has not to be important for me.
But you were aware of this fact.
Then let us forget about it. What about the fact that the Earthlings have also been watching me, the various military and secret services, as well as that group in South America, which emerged from fugitive Nazi engineers, which built flying discs in Germany, and then later in the USA and in South Africa? I knew about that. But is there anything special about it? In particular, whether such flying discs are still being produced today, and whether they still fly around the world?
None of this has changed. Not even the fact that certain states continue to work within the same framework, and that the Nazi flying apparatus technology captured by the war victors continues to be worked on, as do many descendants of Nazi engineers who have been trained as engineers and who can also work on Nazi techniques relating to flying discs, etc., and show good results.
Mainly in South America, but probably not only in one country, right?
That is correct.
On the 19th of November 2011, at the 530th official contact, we talked about the convergence of evolution, in terms of the fact that on planets with the same climatic and natural conditions, etc., similar life forms of all kinds are emerging. This was obviously not correctly understood by someone, so I will come back to it. What was explained in the 530th contact conversation is that on worlds with the same climate, atmosphere and natural conditions, etc., there are also the same life forms of all genera and species on these worlds as there are on Earth. This is of course only to be understood according to the planetary state of evolution respectively development. For example, at the time of the Mesozoic, that is to say about 200 million years ago, dinosaurs lived, whereas today the life forms known to us populate the Earth. Other exoplanets, which have different non-toxic or poisonous climatic, atmospheric, and natural conditions, naturally also have different living conditions, and consequently completely different life forms exist on them. They can be more or less oxygen breathers, but also toxic breathers, depending on the planetary and natural conditions. This should actually be added to what was discussed at the 530th official contact conversation.
Which I probably do not have to explain further since your explanation is correct.
Thank you. Then the following question. The size of the planet Malona Phaeton was about the same as that of Earth. But the asteroids created by the explosion only correspond to a part of the destroyed planet, as your daughter Simyase and also Quetzal once told me. The total mass of all asteroids together should be less than the total mass of our moon. So where's the rest of it?
What has been explained to you is correct, and the small mass of all asteroids together consists in the fact that the majority of the planet was blown away with enormous force as a single piece during the explosion. This was hurled in the direction of the gas planet Jupiter and was finally attracted and swallowed up by it.
Some time ago you said that this year you would say something about it if more special events occurred. It was this in connection with the Mayan calendar. I think that it will only be appropriate to mention something if something extraordinary happens or...
That was also the opinion.
Exactly. Well, it happens again and again in recent decades that large schools of fish suddenly die in inland waters and in the sea, as was also the case last year somewhere on the west coast of America. However, the same thing has happened in the past, as your father Svath once explained, that the reason for this is that the seasons are particularly hot, which warms up the water in such a way that the oxygen in it sinks to such an extent that the fish and other aquatic life also die from lack of oxygen. The question now is whether climate change can possibly increase this.
This is indeed the case. Although there have always been special death zones in which solar radiation causes particularly strong water heating, which causes a strong reduction in the oxygen in the water, causing the death of many aquatic organisms. This warming of the water also results in the phenomenon that various aquatic animals, such as seals, leave their original waters in whole swarms and move to other places, often hundreds of kilometers away, for a longer period of time, where more hydrogen-oxygen is available, only to return to their original places when the oxygen conditions in the water return to normal. The intensity of the sun's rays is therefore the determining factor in these phenomena. But the blatantly changing climate is also a factor, causing certain marine and inland water areas to experience major temperature changes and a drop in oxygen levels. But now, dear friend, I have something else to explain that concerns you privately, and indeed it is about